The antiseptic smell of the hospital waiting room clung to the air as Martha Callaway's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. "Jack," she answered. His voice was light, almost giddy. "I've emptied our accounts and I'm moving to Miami. Good luck with your annoying mom." His cruel laugh echoed through the window as her mother was wheeled into brain surgery. "I deserve this, Martha. 26 years and I'm finally free." She said nothing. She didn't need to, because for the past 2 months she'd been preparing for this exact moment. Offshore transfers, mistress names, video footage from their home office. Martha had it all. Quietly she ended the call, opened her secure folder, and tapped send. The file of a recorded confession was now in her attorney's hands. Jack thought he'd escaped, but in his arrogance, he didn't just betray her. He gave her everything she needed to destroy him. Martha Callaway was 49 years old and had spent most of her adult life being the backbone of her family. An accounting manager at a mid-size publishing company in Chicago, she was known at work for her precision, discretion, and quiet strength. But at home, her role had been far more than just professional. She had supported her husband, Jack, through law school, 3 career changes, and a failed business venture that drained nearly $100,000, 0 cents of their savings. He had the dreams. She had the discipline. They never had children. Jack had insisted early on that he wasn't interested in parenthood, and after much soul-searching, Martha had accepted it. Instead, she poured her nurturing energy into her career and, later, into caring for her mother, Eleanor, especially after her stroke 4 months ago. Her mother's needs were constant: doctor appointments, medications, long days at the rehab clinic. Martha never complained, but Jack did. He resented the time Martha spent with her mother. He called Eleanor manipulative, accused her of faking symptoms for attention. The more Martha invested in her mother's care, the more distant Jack became. He stayed late at work, spent more time in his home office with the door closed, and angled his screen away from her when she walked in. At first, Martha brushed it off. Maybe he was just stressed, but the tension didn't ease. It grew. Jack began asking questions about their finances, casually at first, then more pointedly. He wanted to know how much was in their investment accounts, what their joint retirement portfolio looked like, and whether she still had access to her father's inheritance. The timing felt off, especially since they had always managed their finances with a shared understanding. Martha handled the numbers. Jack didn't ask questions. And it wasn't just the questions. She found a browser tab left open: best places to retire in Florida. Another day, a document listing states with favorable divorce laws. Then came the login attempt to their joint investment account from an IP address in Miami. That was when something inside Martha shifted. 2 instincts sharpened. She'd spent years studying financial behavior patterns. She specialized in catching mistakes others overlooked. And now, her training in forensic accounting wasn't just professional, it was personal. She started keeping a log of Jack's odd behavior. She printed bank statements, captured screenshots, saved every suspicious email. 2 weeks later, she opened a separate bank account in her name only and transferred $50,000, 0 cents, into it, enough to cover her mother's brain surgery and a few months of living expenses. It wasn't the full picture of what she deserved after 26 years of marriage, but it was enough to give her breathing room if things went south. She didn't tell anyone, not even her closest friend at work. She kept smiling at dinner, kept folding Jack's laundry, kept asking about his day. But every evening after Jack went to bed, Martha sat alone at the kitchen table, compiling evidence. Her trust had eroded, but her composure never cracked. She knew something was coming. She could feel it in her bones. Jack had always dismissed her as the responsible one, the boring one, the woman who planned things to death. He had no idea how dangerous a responsible woman could be when she sensed a storm brewing. And as the day of her mother's surgery approached, Martha had already started building the fortress she would need to survive what she suspected was coming. Not just survive, but win. 2 weeks before her mother's surgery, Martha came home early from work with a pounding migraine. She moved through the house quietly, hoping to rest without disturbing Jack. But as she passed the hallway near his office, she heard his voice, low, amused, and unmistakably casual. The door was ajar, and Jack's back was turned to her. He was on a video call, laughing. "And she has no idea," Jack said, grinning at the screen. "Still thinks we're the perfect team. Meanwhile, I've got access to everything." Jack frowned. "Investments. Even her inheritance from her dad." A woman's voice responded, sultry and impatient. "You're sure the timing works? I don't want to wait." "It's perfect," Jack said confidently. "Her mom's surgery is the 15th. She'll be focused on that all day. I'll transfer everything in the morning, and by the time she notices, we'll be long gone. We can be out of the country by the end of the month." Martha didn't move. Her hands were trembling, her mouth dry, but her instincts kicked in. Quietly, she backed away, left the house, and drove straight to a quiet cafe. Her heart was pounding, but her mind was razor sharp. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was real, and it was happening fast. That night, she called Patricia Wilson, a top-tier divorce attorney with a reputation for handling complex financial betrayals. Patricia listened calmly, then responded with measured urgency. "We need to act quickly and discreetly, no confrontation. Let him move first. We'll catch him in the act." The plan took shape. Martha installed discreet security cameras in their home office, capturing Jack's conversations and activities. She began collecting bank records, statements, and screenshots. Patricia referred her to a forensic accountant, who started documenting the source of all their wealth, most of which came from Martha's income. They needed more, so Martha hired a private investigator. Within days, he confirmed the identity of the woman from the video call, Veronica Daniels, a 38-year-old former client of Jack's. They had been seeing each other for at least 8 months. Jack had rented a condo in Miami, using a Shell LLC, and purchased 2 plane tickets for the morning of the surgery. Martha worked with her bank to set up account flags. Any large transfer or suspicious login attempt would trigger immediate alerts, but she couldn't block Jack's access without tipping him off. So she smiled through dinner, listened to Jack talk about fake client meetings in Denver, and watched him lie to her face with all the ease of a man who thought he'd already won. At night, she lay beside him in silence, listening to his steady breathing, wondering how long he had planned her ruin. Every word he spoke now sounded like a warning. Every smile felt like a threat. But she never flinched. She was ready. Let him believe he was in control. Because the moment he made his move, everything would turn. At 10:17 a.m., and Martha sat alone in the sterile hospital waiting room, her phone rang. Jack's name lit up the screen. She took a steadying breath and answered, keeping her voice neutral. "Show me your mother," he asked, tone falsely casual. "She's in surgery now," Martha replied, her heart pounding. There was a pause. Then Jack's voice shifted, becoming lighter, smug. "Actually, there's something I need to tell you." Martha braced herself. "What is it?" "I've emptied our accounts, checking, savings, investments, all of it. Gone." His chuckle echoed through the phone. "I'm starting over in Miami. Veronica and I are already celebrating." He laughed again, as if he'd just won a prize. 26 years of marriage, and I'm finally free. You can deal with your mother and the medical bills on your own. Honestly, Martha, you deserve this. Always so boring, always so responsible. You care more about that woman than your own husband. Now you can spend your life taking care of her without me in the way." Martha let the silence stretch, her phone quietly recording every word. Then she spoke, her voice calm. "You're really in Miami?" "Yep," he said. "Beautiful South Beach. Don't bother trying to trace anything. The condo's not in my name, and the money's offshore. By the time you realize what's happened, we'll be long gone." "You transferred everything while I'm here at the hospital?" she asked softly. giving him one last chance to confirm. "Every last cent," Jack said proudly. "By the time you even think about lawyers, it'll be untraceable." Martha said nothing more. She ended the call, saved the recording, and forwarded it to Patricia with one line. "It's done," he confessed. "Within minutes," Patricia replied. "Perfect. Filing now. Sit tight." Martha watched as alert after alert lit up her phone. Large transfers flagged, suspicious activity detected, accounts frozen pending fraud review. By the time Jack finished his celebratory mimosa, his empire had collapsed. The offshore funds were intercepted and routed to escrow at the emergency court order. The judge had been briefed in advance, prepared to sign everything the moment evidence came through. Jack had handed them exactly what they needed. Martha remained in the waiting room, calm and composed. She checked on her mother, spoke briefly with the nurses, then returned to her chair. Her phone buzzed again, this time from Patricia. "Emergency freeze approved. Hearing set. You're in the clear." Jack had believed he was brilliant, untouchable, that no one could stop him. But he'd underestimated Martha, the woman he called boring, the woman he left behind in a hospital lobby while she cared for her ailing mother. As the surgeon approached with news that the operation had gone well, Martha's shoulders dropped with relief. Her mother was safe. The accounts were secure. And Jack? He had just walked straight into a trap he never saw coming. That night, Martha was sitting beside her mother in the recovery room when her phone rang again, this time from an unknown Miami number. She stepped into the hallway and answered, expecting more banking alerts or updates from Patricia. But instead, she heard an unfamiliar voice, sharp and panicked. "Is this Martha Callaway?" the woman demanded. "Who is this?" "This is Veronica Daniels. Jack says you've frozen our money." Martha didn't even blink. "Our money?" Veronica scoffed. "Yes, the money he transferred this morning. The hotel's asking for payment. His cards are getting declined. What did you do?" Martha kept her voice calm and measured. "I protected myself. Jack illegally attempted to transfer marital funds while I was in a hospital waiting room during my mother's brain surgery. Those accounts were flagged. A judge has frozen everything." There was a beat of silence before Veronica snapped back. "He told me they were his accounts, that you didn't work, that the money came from a settlement," Martha said, the composure in her voice ice cold. "I've been the primary breadwinner for our entire 26-year marriage. I supported him through law school. I paid the bills while he chased 3 different careers. The money Jack promised you, that was mine." From the background, Martha heard Jack's voice. "Who are you talking to? Give me the phone." Suddenly, his voice took over. "Martha," he growled, "what the hell have you done?" Martha didn't flinch. "Exactly what you'd expect from the boring, responsible wife. I protected myself. The funds are frozen. The credit cards are canceled. Even the condo payment has been flagged for investigation." "You planned this," Jack shouted. "You knew I was going to transfer the money." "Yes," she said simply. "I did. I've known for weeks. Every call you made in our home office, recorded. Every password you changed, logged. Every transfer attempt, flagged and documented. I have everything, Jack." He went silent. "And more thing," Martha added. "Patricia Wilson will be contacting you tomorrow with divorce papers. I suggest you find an attorney." She ended the call and stood quietly in the hallway, letting the phone drop to her side. She had just listened to the man she'd supported for over 2 decades, rage over losing money he didn't even earn. A man who had abandoned her emotionally long before he tried to abandon her financially. Patricia followed up minutes later with a confirmation. The court-approved restraining orders had been filed. and the official divorce papers were being couriered to Jack's beachfront hotel in Miami. The affidavit would be hand-delivered by a Miami-Dade sheriff. Martha stepped back into her mother's room, watching her sleep peacefully under soft white sheets. Her chest tightened, not from fear anymore, but from the weight of truth settling in. She thought of the sacrifices she'd made, sleepless nights, balancing ledgers while Jack chased another dead-end dream. The times she let her own ambitions take a back seat so he could feel like the man of the house. The years she walked on eggshells, downplaying her accomplishments to preserve his fragile ego. Now, all of it was laid bare. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was emotional, it was spiritual. It was a husband who saw her loyalty not as strength, but as leverage. A man who mocked her love for her mother, then tried to rob her blind during the most vulnerable moment of her life. But she wasn't broken. She was awake, clear, ready. And finally, free. Over the next several days, Martha barely had to lift a finger. Patricia handled everything with ruthless precision. Court orders were expedited. Emergency injunctions were filed and approved. By the end of the week, every account Jack touched had been frozen. His name was flagged at Miami versus Iona Miami, on hold pending investigation into marital fraud. The condo he leased for his new life with Veronica? Payments reversed, flagged as misappropriated marital funds. The forensic audit confirmed what Martha already knew in her bones. She had contributed nearly 80% of their shared wealth, not just in paycheck deposits, but in 401k rollovers, insurance premiums, utility payments, and personal loans made in her name to prop up Jack's failed ventures. The paper trail was airtight. One afternoon, as Martha reviewed the latest legal brief with Patricia, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was Veronica. "Please, I didn't know. Jack promised me this life. I didn't know the money was yours. I'm stuck here. I need help." Martha didn't respond. She forwarded the text to Patricia, who added it to the case file and requested a deposition subpoena for Veronica, labeling her as a willing beneficiary of marital fraud. That same day, Jack's personal credit cards were declined at a luxury boutique in Miami. He had tried to buy a $6,000 0-cents watch. When the transaction failed, store security politely asked him to leave. He walked out humiliated. At the condo, another issue surfaced. The utilities were suddenly disconnected. Martha had been the one paying the bills through a linked marital account. The judge's freeze order included all automatic payments. The air conditioning stopped working. The water went off. The internet was being too routine, was now sweating in a dark, stuffy rental unit. Veronica left the next day. According to the PI Patricia had retained, she called a rideshare to the airport and boarded a budget flight back to New York. No note. No goodbye. Jack tried calling Martha. She let it ring. Then came another text, this time from his lawyer. "Mr. Callaway is requesting a private conversation. Can you please contact us regarding a settlement?" Patricia responded for her, "Prepare for trial." But Martha had one more move left. She scheduled a recorded call under legal advisement. It was framed as a last opportunity for Jack to speak directly before the court appearance. He took the bait. On the call, his voice was strained but arrogant. "You win, Martha. Is that what you want to hear? You planned this, didn't you? You waited until I made a move." "I protected myself," she said calmly. "I made one mistake. I trusted that you'd be too focused on your mother to notice." "That wasn't a mistake, Jack. That was your habit. You underestimated me." He was silent. Then he added, "We could have had a clean break. But you had to destroy everything. You destroyed it the moment you emptied our accounts and laughed while I was in a hospital waiting room. You weren't trying to leave me. You were trying to erase me. I'll regret this. Now, Jack, you'll regret betting against the woman who built your life from the ground up." Then she ended the call and blocked his number. That night, Patricia sent one final email. The judge had approved a motion for asset division based on disproportional contribution. Martha would retain ownership of their primary residence in Chicago, 100% of her retirement accounts, and would receive 70% of liquid assets. Jack's LLC was ordered dissolved pending further review. He was granted no alimony. The court date was still ahead, but the damage had already been done. Martha's revenge wasn't loud or messy. It was measured. It was legal. It was devastating. She didn't destroy Jack. He did that himself. She simply made sure there was a mirror waiting when it all fell apart. 6 months later, the courtroom was filled with tension as the final hearing began. Martha sat tall, dressed simply, calm and prepared. Jack slumped beside his third attorney, noticeably thinner, his usual smugness replaced with exhaustion. The judge read over the findings with a steady, even tone, but there was no mistaking the judgment in his words. "Mr. Callaway," the judge began, "your actions demonstrate an egregious breach of marital trust. Not only did you attempt to siphon marital funds in the midst of your spouse's family medical crisis, but your financial misconduct, deceit, and premeditated intent to leave your wife destitute all weigh heavily against you." Jack stared blankly ahead, offering no defense. His attorney barely spoke, aware the case was already lost. "Mrs. Callaway," the judge continued, "given the substantial evidence, your primary role in the financial health of the marriage, and the malicious nature of your husband's actions, this court awards you 85% of the marital assets. Mr. Callaway is responsible for all legal fees, and all fraudulent accounts are to be dissolved immediately." A heavy silence filled the room as the gavel struck. Martha didn't cry. She didn't smile. She simply exhaled. Patricia leaned over and whispered, "It's over." Outside the courtroom, the wind felt different, lighter. Martha looked up at the sky, then pulled out her phone and sent one message to her mother's nurse. "Tell Mom I'll be there by 6. That evening, Martha arrived at her mother's small home. The living room smelled of lavender and roasted vegetables. Her mother, now steadily recovering from surgery, sat upright on the couch, with a warm blanket across her lap. "You won," her mother said with a proud gleam in her eyes. "I didn't just win," Martha replied. "I ended it." They shared a quiet dinner, grilled salmon, rice, and Martha's homemade lemon vinaigrette. At dessert, her mother poured 2 small glasses of champagne and raised hers in a toast. "To peace," she said. "Freedom," Martha added. They clinked glasses and sipped slowly. The weight of the last few years began to melt from Martha's shoulders. Jack was out of her life, not just legally, but emotionally. He had taken her for granted, tried to discard her when she was no longer convenient, and underestimated the strength she'd been quietly building for decades. He didn't just fail, he gave her every opportunity to reclaim herself. Martha spent the following weeks rebuilding, but not in the way others expected. She didn't buy a new car. She didn't move out of state. Instead, she started something new. Small, personal. She launched a part-time consulting business for women navigating financial abuse during divorce. She called it Ledger Light. Her first client was a nurse from her mother's clinic. Within weeks, word spread. Martha's name, once buried under her husband's ambitions, was finally standing on its own. She attended community events, hosted Sunday dinners with friends, and, for the first time in years, laughed without hesitation. Her mother's health stabilized. Her savings grew. The house felt like home again. She wasn't seeking revenge anymore. That chapter had closed. Now, she was simply living, confident, clear, and unapologetically on her own terms. Martha stood in the doorway of her new condo, a modest 2-bedroom with warm wood floors and soft lighting that poured in through tall windows. It wasn't extravagant, but it was hers. Chosen without compromise, without anyone else's opinion weighing in. The first thing she unpacked was a framed photo of her and her mother from 10 years ago, both of them smiling in front of Lake Michigan. She placed it on the bookshelf, then sat on the couch, took a deep breath, and felt the silence settle around her. Not heavy, not empty, but peaceful. In the weeks following the court ruling, Martha took deliberate steps toward rebuilding. She updated her will, ensuring her assets would be protected and passed on to causes she cared about. She also opened a small scholarship fund in her mother's name for women pursuing degrees in accounting and finance, especially those re-entering school after personal hardship. The fund's first recipient was a single mother who had fled an abusive marriage. Watching that woman walk across a stage to receive her grant brought tears to Martha's eyes. Jack and Veronica disappeared from her radar entirely. There were no more messages, no legal updates. Their social media profiles vanished. It was as if they'd dissolved into the background, where they could no longer touch her. And that was enough. Martha didn't crave updates or consequences anymore. Revenge had never been the point. Freedom was. She began spending her evenings volunteering at a local community center, leading financial literacy classes for women. Some were going through divorces. Some were trying to escape debt. Some just needed a safe space to ask questions without judgment. Martha saw parts of herself in each of them. The uncertainty, the quiet strength, the hunger for clarity. Every time she helped someone set up a new savings account, separate their finances, or draft a plan for independence, she felt a piece of herself stitched back together. Saturdays were for her mother. She visited without fail, bringing groceries, laughter, and updates about the women she was mentoring. They'd sit on the porch with tea and talk about everything and nothing. Her mother's health was steady, and her eyes were always bright when Martha walked through the door. That bond, tested but unbroken, became Martha's anchor. Her life was no longer built around sacrifice. It was structured around choice. A quiet night with a book, a brisk morning walk along the lake, a dinner with new friends who respected her time and voice. The betrayal she had endured no longer hovered over her like a shadow. It had become a point on the timeline. A painful one, yes, but no longer the defining one. What defined her now was resilience, wisdom, and purpose. Martha had once believed her strength came from how much she could endure. Now, she knew it came from how fully she could live. Have you ever been betrayed by someone who thought they were smarter than you? Someone who counted on your silence, your loyalty, your exhaustion just to get away with their scheme? Martha Callaway's story isn't just about divorce. It's about calculation, foresight, and the power of staying quiet until the right moment. Jack thought he could drain her accounts, humiliate her, and vanish with a new life in Miami while her mother was in surgery. But what he didn't know was that Martha had already mapped every detail, documented every move, and built her defense long before he ever made his call. If you've ever been the one who did everything right, the responsible one, the quiet one, the one everyone took for granted, know this. You hold the most power when you finally decide enough is enough. Because Martha didn't scream, she didn't chase. She let the system work, let the facts speak, and walked away with her dignity, her assets, and her peace. If her story moved you, we want to hear yours. Have you ever been underestimated and then turned the tables? Tell us in the comments. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and join us here at Veiled Fury, where betrayal meets brilliance, and justice isn't loud. It's absolute. Sometimes revenge isn't rage, it's strategy, a court ruling, and the sound of your own freedom.